Hello you! You can now get yourself a Hello You mug and lots of other cool swag at the Geekism official store. Look good and support the channel at the same time. You'll find the link in the description. Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Pinewood Hills, and I hope it sounds like I'm a little happier this week than I was last week. First of all, a massive shout out is needed. Actually, first things first, if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, it really helps out the channel, and if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe, blah blah blah. But the most important thing today is a huge shout out to one of the long-standing members of the Geekism community, Slipknotting. I won't use his real name, but he's been around for a long time now, watched the videos since way back when, and really been an active member of the community for a long time. And after last week's episode of me basically crying that the game was consistently crashing due to the advanced move bug, he got in touch and said, "Right, I've had enough of this. I'm buying you some RAM." Because whilst it's it's a fix, really the perfect fix is Frontier fix the game, which hopefully that we're going to get a fix for it with the upcoming update. But in the meantime, more RAM helps, because basically it looks like a memory leak. So he very, very generously bought me 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I now have 32 gigabytes in the system, and I can quite happily say that since then I've played Planko for about 9 hours and have not had a single crash, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's so nice to be able to come back into the game and not be having to look over my shoulder every 20 minutes and save. You will see occasionally that I do still save because I've kind of started to get into the habit now, but yeah, it's so nice to just not lose the work that I've been doing, because it really is sort of difficult to lose stuff and then come back. So thank you so much. I'm eternally grateful, and also, to be fair, I'm eternally grateful to every single one of you who comes here and watches the videos each week, because through ad revenue and Patreon and things like that, I'm able to do this semi-professionally now. I'll be honest with you, it's not a full-time wage yet, but it is getting to a point now where it's helping to pay bills, and I'm able to sit down and spend more time each week doing it, and I'm just incredibly grateful for every single one of you, but especially to Slipknotting for helping me out with some RAM. So, what are we doing today? First of all, we're doing some backstage work on the stage there. You'll see the stage is a bit more developed since the last episode. That's because we had a live stream where we came in and did a little bit of work on it. And here we're doing a bit of a backstage, and I wanted it all to look very temporary, I guess, for want of a better word. So the backstage buildings are porta cabins. So I had a little Google to try and find what porta cabins look like. I actually spent a year in one of these in school. I meant my year 5 class in primary school was spent in a porta cabin because we were having a building done. So spent a lot of time in one of these. It was a little bigger than this one, to be honest with you, but yeah, this is pretty much it. Xander doesn't sound too happy about that. It's okay though, he's with his mum. So I was originally going to do a tiered roof on these. They do have them, but it didn't look quite right in the game. So instead we go back to a relatively flat roof and use a chimney there, more of sort of like an airflow point more than anything really, sort of like just a way of connecting air. And we place a couple of these down with a generator, and like I say, a few lorries there, a coach there for maybe some of the cast or something. I'm very much trying to get across the idea that this is maybe a bit temporary, and also probably outsourced as well. This isn't the Pinewood staff coming in to present this show. These are probably been bought in by the Gulpy team, and it's also very brand values, and this is something I really wanted to get across in this area. We didn't do it so much with the flat area, but this area there still needs a little bit of work, and also the next thing we're going to work on as well. I really wanted to get across the idea that Gulpy is a brand and they're here to sell drinks. That's a very important thing I really wanted to really sort of stick to. You'll notice here I actually get rid of the boat ride as well. There's something we started work on in the 60s area, and the main reason I'm getting rid of that is because I feel that the park is probably a bit too small for it, and I'm still hoping for the fact that the awesome cable cars that Ruble Trillions built will eventually become real cable cars if they ever add them to the game. So, and also I want a little bit more room. So here I'm building a coaster. I'm not building a coaster. The coaster's built. It's built by Mike and Seven. This is his second coaster in the park. And what this is actually was when I was working for Mass Bandits Park at Conifer Slopes, I asked Mike to build me a coaster. He actually built me 2, and he said, "Here's 2 for you. One is a little bit more close to the to the spec that I gave him, which is the one I ended up using for Mass Bandit. He said, here's another one that I've just sort of built as well, both kiddie coasters. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to use that, I'm not going to let it go to waste, and that can become, I knew I always wanted a kiddie coaster in this area, a Gulpy coaster, so I thought here would be a perfect place to do it. So it's gone straight flat pack in. It's going to be a really cheap kid coaster, not quite the sort of travelling fair style of a Caterpillar coaster or Big Apple or whatever you want to call them, but just one step up from that. It's going to be placed down on concrete, very, very cheap. It's all about really just sort of getting something on the ground that you can call a coaster, and you can stick Gulpy all over it, and kids will come and ride it, and they'll be indoctrinated into drinking the horrible, horrible sugary liquid that Gulpy is, I'm sure. So that was kind of the remit here. So keeping a very simple station. So what I wanted to try and get with the station here was it's quite a cheap wood and concrete build, but they've kind of tried to make it a little bit more kid friendly by using some bright paint. So it's all sort of wood and concrete and very cheap materials, but then painted up using this kind of like bluey, purple, orange. I wanted something really quite garish. So that's kind of what we've gone for here, this kind of purpley orange colour scheme. I feel that it kind of matches the idea of a drink, really sort of over-the-top energy drinks brand, something like, let me try and think of an example. You go to somewhere like Blackpool and they have the Iron Brew ride, or even if you look back at some of the early Alton Towers stuff, even though they weren't actually themed around IPs, they kind of went for this sort of really garish colour scheme for a little while as well. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. Like I say, keeping it really simple, really cheap, but using some colour, some flags and things like that to kind of bring across the Gulpy brand. And also make it quite easy so that if they ever lose the Gulpy brand, a lick of paint and pulling a few signs down would make this a generic coaster. That's something else I feel that I notice with IP-based rides, that they try and keep them relatively lightly themed so that if they need to, they can get rid of it. Something we've not done here before, actually. We're building a very simple luggage storage, because there's nowhere really to store your luggage. So it's a very simple sort of shelf that you can keep on the side there. I toyed back and forth between one or two trains on this coaster. Eventually I settled for one for a few reasons. One, this system is very simple and really works for one train, and also because of the layout, there wasn't really able to get a transfer track in there, which you really kind of need if you've got multiple trains, because you want to try and get one off and one on and whatever, but also because of the style of the track and the sort of theme I was going for with the ride, I thought one train felt a little bit more realistic. So you'll notice that. Moving on then to the name of the ride. The ride I actually called Gulpy Gush, but I actually make the sign here just say Gulpy Coaster. And again, there's a little bit of a story in my head about the idea that this was originally just coaster or something like that. I don't know, but I had the idea of doing this sort of font from scratch, not using a reference point, but the idea of having this sort of circular font. And I think it turned out pretty well. A couple of the letters are a bit funky, but then I wanted to have this colour scheme where it sort of starts off as red and goes down to yellow through the sort of orange colour scheme. And I noticed it actually works a lot better here where the letters overlap a little bit. So that's what we're doing here, and eventually that turned out really quite nice actually. But again, I want you to realise that this is really garish and a bit tacky. That's the point. I wanted this to be really over the top, really tacky. Remembered that we had this energy drink piece there that I thought we could stick in and have the O look like a can. Little things like that. All of this is very much a camel. So the idea behind a camel is it's a horse made by committee, and I really wanted this whole ride to be as if it's been designed by somebody who knows about design, and then it's been sent to the money men, and the money men have said, oh well, it's fine, but there's nowhere near enough references to Gulpy drinks and our characters and our IP and our colour scheme. So then it goes back to the design guy and he adds a little bit more on, and it goes back to the drinks people and they go, oh well, yeah, it's great, I mean, it looks really good, but I'd love it if we could have an actual Gulpy drinking from the drink on the ride, not really understanding cost limitations or physical issues and stuff like that. So that's kind of the theme I've tried to go for here. And now we're working on the queue line. Again, I wanted to keep this super simple. One thing I do want to do, actually, and I'll be honest with you, I just kind of ran out of time. I put on Twitter that I was waiting for this RAM to come, so this is why the video is coming out on a Saturday and not a Friday. And it's why although I feel like I've got quite a lot done this week, actually, I wanted to get a little bit more done. I really wanted to try and start to cap this Gulpy area off now, but I think it's going to take one more episode to do that. But one of the things I do want to try and do is at Alton Towers for Spinball Whizzer, which is a pretty good spinning coaster, pretty intense really, but usually sort of marketed as kids. One of the smaller rides one of the sort of height restrictions lower rides you can go on. It's relatively near the kids area of CBeebies Land as well. So and for a long time it was sponsored by Sonic the Hedgehog. It was known as Sonic Spinball. Before that it was Spinball Whizzer, and now has gone back to being Spinball Whizzer after losing the IP. But one thing they have are these games you can play in the queue, and they're kind of like pinball machines, I suppose, and there's sort of little air blasting things. So there's a button on the queue, and you can press the button, it shoots a ball out, and it'll be pinball or the ball falling down the pipes or whatever. You can get some scores, and it's just a little thing you can do while you're queuing up. I've seen it done much better in other places. I know off the top of my head, at Walt Disney World in Florida, the Seven Dwarfs mine mine, whatever they call it, the swinging mine car coaster. They have some really great queue games you can play where you have to collect gems and can spin the barrels of gems round to make the dwarves appear on the roof and stuff. There's a really, really lovely interaction. So the budget version of that is these little sort of compressed air games that I don't think any of them actually work now, to be honest. I noticed when I went a couple of weeks ago and tried pressing the buttons, nothing happened, and that's just perfect. That's exactly the sort of feel that I want to go for in Pinewood. So I will probably look at adding a couple of those as well. Might do those on the live stream this week. Maybe we can have a go. That's a good sort of thing to try and make on a live stream, I think. So we'll do those. And then really, this area is really starting to fill out now. There's a little bit of green between this coaster and the very edge of the Thunderer, our original Woody. And I think I'm going to turn that into a bit of a midway run, because we haven't done any midway across this side of the park. And really, in these budget parks, midway is everywhere. It really is all over the place. There's loads of options to do it. So we're going to take some of Ruble Trillions' midways, bring them over here, and brand them up like a Gulpy midway run, and have them over this side, and that'll kind of fill in that area, start tying it all together, and really make this Gulpee Land look full and garish, and just very obviously there to squeeze every single penny they can out of the punters, and that's really what it's all about here for Gulpee Land anyway. And then we're going to be moving on after this. Time-wise, we're a little out now. I actually think Gulpee Land would be one of the later additions to the park, but apart from Gulpee Land, everything else is kind of ran through. We started in the 40s, moved around to the 60s where we had our Googie area, and then sort of 70s, mid to late 70s with Mass Bandits, and then Ruble did some Googie stuff as well, and then we had mid to late 70s with Mass Bandits area, and then the next area we're going to be looking at is a kind of early 90s area that's going to be a little bit more themed. Park's doing pretty well, it's quite successful, and also it's becoming much easier to fly over to the States and see some of their bigger parks, so the British parks really have to start upping their game. And you'll notice, if you look back at the history of places like Alton Towers, Blackpool, Thorpe Park, that was when they really started to pump up the theming of the rides. Before that, 70s, 80s, we had just things like the Corkscrew, the Black Hole, really sort of no theming at all like the Corkscrew, or very specific static theming like the Black Hole. It was all just under one roof and that was it. And then after that we started to get these sort of themed areas like Ugland, which has now become I don't know, Spooky Forest or whatever it is. That's what they seem to do now. But they've got these sort of areas now, Katanga Canyon and all that. These sort of theming really came up in the sort of mid 80s to the 90s. So our next area is probably going to be using a lot of the adventure pack, and I'm thinking sort of like a light adventure theme, sort of Indiana Jones on a budget kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I think we're going to have some help with that. I don't want to announce it now because I'm still chatting, but I think we've got our next guest lined up, which I'm super excited about, because they having guests on the on the series really fill me full of ideas, and I love getting the park back and seeing what they've done. It fills me full of energy to carry on. So yeah, really looking forward to that. So the coaster's built, and there we go, and it's we've done some work there to sort of cap it off against the lake. And again, lots of work still to do around the back of this, but one thing I really wanted to do is to place a couple of these cheap scenery pieces down. This is the big one, and this is going to be a Gulpy in a vat of Gulpy juice, okay? And these things, you see these all over the place. They're like, they're meant to be like an impossible object. It looks like the liquid at the top, the vessel at the top is floating and pouring water down into a pond. Sometimes they're like teapots or taps. Sometimes they're like a faucet, spraying water down. And the way it works is that the actual pipe taking the water up to the tap runs in the middle of the water coming down. So that's what we're building there. And I've even put the pipe in for to real realism. We're getting down to the real nitty-gritty realism here. So you can see the pipe sometimes through the water. But what I wanted to do was have a Gulpy sort of chilling out. It's a bit gross, this, really. I was thinking this was a little bit sort of Willy Wonka-esque, the Gulpy sitting there in a vat of his own drink. Or a little bit like the, what's the Willy Wonka-esque one they do in Futurama? The Slurms Mackenzie or something like that, where it turns out the drink is a big thing just squirting it out of its bum or whatever. I don't know, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now. And then the other thing I wanted to do is have some really just useless scenery. We need something to break up this concrete. Let's just put some bubble shapes in, again, this is the kind of thing I see a lot in these sort of budget parks that are trying their best at theming but really struggling for cash. These sort of these sort of fiberglass shapes and metal shapes that we just need to break up this concrete, and we've got no budget left, so they do that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm going for there. And then we're going to carry on with the queue area a little bit. Again, like I say, we've still got to sort of tie in the left of the queue there with a bit of a midway. And I'm going to try and run, if I can, a backstage area that goes right from the Googie area all the way up here, sort of along the back of the lake almost. So whether we get that done, I'm not too sure. Here, looking at filling in a bit of the greenery. So one thing we did have here is a little bit of foliage, a little bit of flowering. It's not something we do very often in Pinewood. Colour costs money as far as landscaping is concerned. So for the most part, we keep it sort of greens and bushes and trees. But we do have a really nice flower area over by the Thunderer, which is probably kept as part of the ride's National Heritage status. But here I wanted to have a little bit of money spent on colour, on some flowering plants, but the little bit not quite as well kept, so that's what we're doing there. Placing some bins and benches around. I wanted to do some benches on this outside area. It made me realise that we hadn't got any trash cans in the Gulpy zone itself, so I've just gone back in there, and again using that sort of purpley orange makeup of really random colours, placing some in. And then just doing some very light foliage, back to normal here, lots of bushes and greens and stuff like that, keeping it cheap and things like that. So, moving this queue area over, not really much else happening now, I don't think. Unfortunately, during the edit here, I've got the end of the video playing right now. You won't see this, it'll all get fixed afterwards, but obviously last episode of Pinewood Hills, it ended now because the end screen's come up basically. There it's gone off again now so I can see what's going on. There we go, Gulpy Gush there, 1.9 metres to ride. You'd have to be with an adult for that though, but this is a kiddie coaster, one of the early sort of coasters you'd be able to go on. Here we go then, trying to figure out what to do here. I was originally just going to forest it and just have it sort of very green. Then I thought, no, do you know what? The path there is a good reason for midway. We'll get people moving up the path to the park. You'll notice we don't get many people over this end of the park, really. I thought this coaster would get a few more up here, but it really doesn't. So hopefully in the future, when we move on to an area behind us there and we put in some maybe sort of bigger coasters, it'll start moving people over to this end of the park. What we might have to look at doing, if we don't end up getting something like chairlifts that we can do, is maybe faking it. I've been thinking about this for a while now, faking it with something like a monorail or a train underground. So digging out the underground and putting a monorail down there where the stations go from the chairlift. So it looks like people are using the chairlifts, but actually they're sort of taking an underground monorail. It would be a lot of work really for what it is, but we do kind of have to think about a way of getting people over to this side of the park, because really there isn't that much, because it's mostly older flats and a kiddie coaster there isn't really getting people over. Anyway, here's a POV of the coaster itself. Again, really simple, nice and low to the ground, cheap kiddie coaster, low excitement, low nausea and all that, but it's sort of first coaster for kids in the park to coming in. And then I'll finish off with a couple of glamour shots as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again for Slipknot for providing the Slipknotting, even for providing the RAM that's helped me actually get into the game and play it and enjoy it for the first time in, I'll be honest with you, a little while. Hoping to get into studios as well, Geekism Studios this week too, now that this issue seems to, at least touch wood, have been sorted a little. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, you can give us a like. It really does help out the channel. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. Any thoughts, queries, or suggestions, you can pop them down in the comments. And if you fancy a chat, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at JohnTSparrow. If you'd like to join in with the Geekism community, you can do so over on our Geekism Discord server. You'll find a link for that in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.